Apparently, Rich Starr. So. Actually, they've got about a minute left to get here. Yeah. Mike Mark.
Make an interesting that. How you doing? This is my second game there. Well, they're everywhere. Overall, yeah. So I know. That's not fair. So the kids done.
I look at the one is the format challenge.
Yeah. Business challenge for you.
So I ended up going.
What's this? 8 megabytes. It's a USB key.
Oh, okay. They called me back at 7 o'clock at night. I said,
My husband Jack.
I always saw that.
Well, he wanted to wait to get out. I'm poor, I'm all just like
How big is Yeah, my bell's called starting to get some function back. It's just annoying. Just answer it. It's not moving.
You meant to take it out of the package, aren't you?
Oh.
Why can't you take it out of the bag? Why can't you take it out of the bag?
Oh yeah. The fish you're going to be changing too, so you can't change the size of the mouth is better.
I saw fish yesterday. They look good.
Well, they think I had a point power button.
I think they're saying like balls to
player once in that seat. That's it. So I was back on that. The system. It throws up entirely on that. Yeah, I read something that it may have already been. Oh, I was thinking, who would have done that?
about a year vaccine.
I was thinking, well, I would
You do?
Yeah. When I died,
I think we're going to wait for reviews.
there you go. So I always have to make sure I'm carrying a field. Well, like I made time. I agree. One of the reasons I have but I mean, that's what you have to.
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't think the power
Listen, thank you. It's kind of real. There's sometimes I get surprised. It's less than that.
Good.
just like, let's take this.
What do you want? What do you
That's
got?
true. You can get spots for first chance to see a Beatle, a live
But it's
Beatle
stopped me from doing
concert with a cousin.
After going in there, and just kind of live. Really excited.
No, it's my fault. I don't know how much. It's just a coincidence that starts.
I'm always at the top, man.
You know,
All day.
Oh, I see that.
so we talked
Tom,
about
yeah, but everybody lives in
How can you not have
People didn't put
pretending jokes? It's
all
all
there.
there. It's not there. In fact, it's the King's dinner speech.
that's different.
First try.
wow.
No, this is
So here's this.
Why are you so? I used to hunt them.
So actual
He knows he asked me to talk about
that's pretty bad.
they can't buy it. But also, or makes it so fucking last.
Does that say flashback?
They're over.
What?
That's what it looks like. I was reading it.
Like right here, it says BNC Minerva was a show.
Some lucky stuff.
Yeah. I remember having a conversation.
Those are
I can't do 3 days.
I don't know if that's
That was,
I feel like that.
You get the same.
2 bucks on it.
I don't know.
1
If I'm planning on trying to.
yeah, the thing is, so yeah, so I'm glad I got this. All the stuff we'll hear talking about
Yeah, I just wasn't.
that's a big thing.
What are your guys?
Oh, yeah. Games of life. No, it's not. I don't like it.
He's gonna be.
Oh, he's happy.
Yeah, we already know he's gonna leave.
Okay.
We were gonna have an overall alliance.
We do.
What?
Philo.
What do you do?
R&D.
Like the years?
Everybody should be just a few more minutes, about ready. Sorry for the delay.
32 off the line.
Ready to wait for the roll to arrive.
When I upgraded the SSD, I just renamed them. Virtually all day with really like on this machine. I wasn't able to use the other machine.
The fact that we should be able to create any of the all the data.
Home cooking.
Yeah, no one else is all.
Then they'll have to go back because he spilled all his milk.
Yeah, there's that.
We've got quite a few. Some, the soda patches though, don't have to see point.
Turn the air on.
It's gonna be hot in here otherwise.
Where's Boatman?
Is there Wi-Fi here?
Yeah.
Free?
Yeah.
Cool.
Also, at some point, I need to give you one of those. I need to give you one of those cords with a MacBook. Obviously, you're not using one.
I'm not using that back today. Yeah.
But I need to give you one because apparently Apple never gave you one. Because I found out recently that Apple stopped giving away
For the longest,
this cord.
you know, I have a box of them at home. I mean,
Okay, you just annoying.
yeah, I normally I don't need it. Normally I don't need it. But when I go to the office, there it's kind of tight, you know.
Watch out. And it's getting fine. Some just swirl on your table. Is that hooked up to anything?
No, this is for, they want to do presentations with the,
Is there a code?
No.
Am I the wrong way?
Are you sure you're on the right one?
I went on the Renaissance conference.
There's one that says public. Renaissance
Public, gotcha.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, what they're
I'll write down how I don't bring.
so we may just be able to get that. Because we need an outlet, I can push the cord in.
I'm not going to point it out all the time. I'm jumping this all the way. But thank you.
I've got a power strip.
Okay, if I end up staying on at the break, I'll go
There's
there.
a power strip on the middle.
Oh, I can get myself. Okay, gotcha. Oh, awesome. Thanks.
I pulled that out
Oh,
of the pile of boxes.
Put this with my map I got last year. Like, wait,
Yeah,
oh, nice. For me?
Yeah, so it is.
I don't think that's the end. There's a lot of controversy about that. Oh, was it? Oh, okay. All the official conference stuff. And then
Upstairs in the.
okay, because I signed up for that one too. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, I made it say I'm going to learn, but. Hello, hello. Who is it?
Is any seat you want up? Is any seat you want?
Everyone?
Huh?
I'm driving on, Dallas to
Scotty's one of the bears in she's more of a worker.
And just so everybody knows, I guess, being the minister of chaos has something to do with tardiness too. I don't know. Can you please be here just a minute?
Yeah. We tried to dance spell on this. Oh, it's not like it was a string.
And if anyone would like me to take pictures of them, please let me know. I'm Jacqueline's wife, Michelle, and I'm going to be putting them in the Dropbox and inviting everybody to the Dropbox. I've been taking pictures since yesterday.
Everybody ready? Well, they're all gathered up there. Ready to come down. They're here and they're in full. And they're preparing something. Yeah.
The grand large.
So we got to get some music going, don't we? Little shroud music in the background.
I think that hotel might frown on
Level.
Yeah.
I like the
So somebody's going to be staying here last?
That's for people to come check out the R32 release. Elwin brought the box. That's an R32 offline, and you can see all the old stuff from R32.
Like artists before.
Yeah.
My lords and ladies, may I present Lord British and Lord Darkstarr. Huzzah! Huzzah!
Good day, good day.
Good day. How are you? I thought some of you recovered from last night.
Yes. Lord British, may you open the convention.
Indeed I shall. So, first of all, let me welcome you all to our SOTA gathering this day. I know many of you have traveled far and wide to be here. This is the first official activities of the event, and I trust that over the next couple of days we will have an exceptional a time of camaraderie and revelry and information exchange to talk about our fine community. And with that, I declare these proceedings open, and again, welcome you.
Huzzah!
And you know, as I said, you know, one of the this is the third or fourth time we've gathered a significant group of the community together here in this fair city. Each time it seems that we get people who not only a larger number of people, but people who've come from the four corners of not only of Novia and New Britannia, but also of these earthly realms that we sometimes occupy. I look forward to kind of discussing with each of you how far you have come, whether you've come from the local geography or across this globe or others. I look forward to hearing from you that in the future. You know, I think that what today is going to really represent is a chance to discuss the 5 or 6 years that we've now all spent together building the world, building the community, building the fellowship that we now share. You know, this year has been a particularly important year along that journey. I'm sure that many of you remember the earliest days when the sum total of our world could be described in something we affectionately called the chicken room.
Yeah.
The reality in which we found ourselves was quite limited, shall we say. And over that time it has grown and grown, and finally this year we found that not only did we reach the point of the time of the software release of what we called episode 1, the completion of the primary aspects of the game, but just literally this month, over the last month, we've reached the point where even the physical aspects of the reality in which we live have become available, and many of you, I suspect, have had them. I've actually only seen a few myself, starting a month or so ago in Germany, and saw one yesterday at our offices where we sometimes work. And I know I myself have one of those physical aspects of our realm that will be delivered to my alternate home up in the northeastern part of this earthly realm. That when I go back up there, I will see my own copy at last, only on Monday. So many of you got it before even I did. But it is a very exciting time. And so, anyway, it is truly with great pleasure that we get a chance to meet, have this fellowship, and share over the next couple of days. So I think that does it for my introduction. And I believe we might need a moment to set up a laptop, and then we will take you on. We will begin your journey into deeper dives, shall we say, into discussing the realms and details of what we have done and what we are going to be doing together in the near future.
Well, Lord, as that is being done, I believe someone has traveled a fair distance to a peasant and a guard.
Ah, yes, of course. No, in fact, that's true. Speaking of that is a good question. In fact, I'd love to hear from others who have traveled particularly far. But let's start with you. Good guard, you know, we met up some moons ago in a fair town. Well, you were doing a fine job guarding, and I asked you to come directly here to assist this day. Is that true?
At your request, Lord, I have made the journey. If there's any guarding you need done, I am the man.
Ah, very well, very well. And who is this that has accompanied you here today?
This is my mentioned squire. This is my last one for his leg, unfortunately.
Ah, I see. And I remember meeting you, I believe. In what fair town was that?
Serpent's Watch, I believe.
Oh, Serpent's Watch. Yes, indeed. And it is good both of you to come. But how did you even know? I mean, I remember when we bumped into each other. It seemed that you knew of SOTACON.
I knew of SOTACON and came to tell you and this nice gentleman.
Yes, yes. Well, but it sounds like it worked out anyway, and I presume you didn't have anything to do with that broken leg. Okay. Oh, very good. Well, that's good to hear. Well, yes, good guard. Well, thank you very much for coming to provide services here. You know, there are some riffraff, it appears, that have kind of maybe come in with the nobles and other peasants.
I'll take care.
And so please do feel free to stop and frisk anyone that seems appropriate.
Frisking is on the menu.
All right, very good, very good. And who else has traveled far? Is anyone? Where have you come from?
England.
England. Ah, my fair homelands as well. And I can't remember you're from London. Was that correct? We discussed that. Thetford. 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 Where is Thetford?
100 miles roughly northeast.
Ah, very good, very good. And who else has come from outside these continental states?
I'm from Canada, and I was laying a boot on the couch, but knew dude about it. I hadn't done so.
You know, yesterday when you came by the office and you weren't purposefully exposing your fair accent, I did notice it was hard for you not to drop into a few of those unusual enunciations. Yeah. Anyone else from outside the continental states? From France, very good. And living in Brazil. So, which did you come from to come here? From Brazil? Excellent. And I saw someone else with their hands up. How far?
From Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi. Oh yeah.
You might recognize that as the place that Garfield sent Pluto.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent.
Odie. Garfield sent Odie.
Yeah.
When he wanted to get rid of him. He put a couple holes in the box.
Perfect. We were talking about boxes and putting your junk in boxes yesterday. just saying, we were. But who else is from outside the continental states? Yes, Winfield.
I'm from the great country of San Antonio, sire.
Yes, the great far away country. So far, San Antonio. And okay, so who's from outside of Austin now that we're? Lots of. Okay. So most everybody. Who's from in Austin? Wow, that's a minority. That's a striking minority. So that's fantastic. Well, that's fantastic. Well, in that case, the vast majority of you actually made a significant journey to be here. So again, that's something I just really appreciate. You getting close already?
Oh yeah.
Let me just say one more thing then before we jump into that, which is that. One of the things that I feel is very powerful about coming together like we are here, that we sort of discovered with Ultima Online, and probably even before Ultima Online, text muds and things had this same effect, that you saw it in action, once you get to the scale of things like Ultima Online, which is that it's something you all know very well, but I think people who are not online gamers, not online role-playing gamers, may not get in the same way I know you do, is that the time we spend together in the virtual world is every bit as real time spent together as experiences that have begun in the physical world. And the relationships that we build with each other, are obviously just as real as they would be otherwise. And that really is those deep bonds that we share is really what drives us to find a way to get together in the real world. And so this, to me, gatherings like this, and really any of the community gatherings that we try to reward with cloaks, in the game when groups get together, I think is again to just celebrate and cement, recognize the importance of not only the virtual bonds, but the chance to get to see each other face to face, shake hands, give each other a hug, break bread, and all the other things we can do together. So in any case, I believe this will help. It's going to be enjoyable and will deepen the bonds that we share together as a community. So thanks. Sure.
Would you like to leave the guards so they may sit?
Oh, yeah, that's probably a good idea. You don't need to, in my mind, stand for the entire next phase, but feel free to
back there. As you wish.
At ease, as it were. So Winfield asked us, and Ezekiel asked us to give a keynote. So what we thought we would do is kind of, we broke it into sections. One is just kind of give a general review of where we are and how we got here, and then kind of project into the future of like what's coming up in Q4, and then what's coming up in 2019. So kind of a third of like where we were, where we're going to be in the very near future, and what's going to come up in the next year. And then hopefully leave a little bit of time for questions. And then also think about, as we're showing you guys things that are coming up, the fact that we're going to have deep dives over the next few days. So we're going to have one this afternoon. We're going to talk about the world and housing, and then there's going to be a couple. There's going to be a few tomorrow that are going to be talking about combat and crafting and storyline too. So if you see things in here, you're like, oh, I want to know more details about that. Remember, we're going to have some deep dives about those tomorrow, but we can answer some questions today too as well. So this is going to be pretty high level, but we're going to dive a lot deeper over the next few days in the specific topics about that. So again, if we give answers today that seem very sort of high level in general, that's because we're planning on going into much greater detail in the specifically focused deep dives. Okay, so the big news, of course, is we finally launched. Yay! And it only took 5 years. It's interesting. Those of you who were with us for Ultima Online, it's pretty crazy to compare the development cycle of that versus the modern games, because Ultima Online was really about 18 to 24 months of development, really, which is crazy to think about, nowadays. We not including the original pitch cycle, which was actually more like a year of us pitching and trying to convince Electronic Arts, hey, the internet's going to be a thing. People would like to game on the internet and hang out with each other. But if you don't count that, if you actually can't count like actual development, that was really about 18 to 24 months. And so, but 5 years and we did it, and that's really all thanks to you guys. And you guys have heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again because I like to say it and I like to talk. Which is, every time you're in the game, just pause for a moment. And I know that the game is full of stuff to do, and it's easy to get, like you always want to do stuff, but just stop for just a second and like just look around at what's going on and look at what you're wearing, look at the sword in your hand, look at the grass waving, look at the sun rising, look at the weather changing, look at the spell effect that's happening in front of you, look at the monster that you're fighting. But all of that happened because of you guys. That is the beauty of crowd-funded and crowdsourced gaming, is you guys willed this thing into existence. Like, all right, Sanford and Son. Now we have a commercial break where we advertise Sanford and Son. It's a show about a lovable old man who has a garbage,
junkyard.
We good? Is it a commercial junkyard?
It looks a lot like the NBNN set.
Yeah, in fact, I think that's why he has a ringtone, because his yard looks like Sanford and Son. Someday he'll clean it up and make it look good, and make our game look good when he does his show. But it's cool, whatever.
It actually has made me constantly come back to seeing the NBNN set has made me constantly rediscuss should furniture being left outdoors weather to the point of decay and going away, so that we can get rid of it.
So as I was saying, you guys made that happen. So thank you, but thank yourselves. right? You know, really, you guys, you know, as much as we, the developers, made the game, you guys made the game. You really did. And it wasn't just with your monetary support, which of course had to happen to make this happen, but it was your feedback and your play testing and your iterative, you know, and every single release of like, oh, well, we should change this and do this and we'll fix this and etc. That was all because of you. So thank you. And we did it. So big round of applause for yourselves, please. So we launched, we did it, we intentionally timed it around South by Southwest so we could take advantage of, you know, press being in town, and we had our good friend Shooter Jennings, who both contributed music to the game, and he came and played our launch event. Thank you all who were able to come to our launch event. It was a great time. We also had, you know, the meteor that came down and crashed and totally destroyed one of our scenes in the game, and replaced it with a new one, which is a cool thing that, you know, while having a bunch of instant scenes is, you know, some people, it's not one of their favorite things, but it gives us the advantage of doing events like that, where we can totally replace a scene, change it out, do things like that. That's one of the advantage of having a game divided into scenes like that, is that we can do events like that where the scene changes and completely does something different. So, and just a reminder, having an instance world like that is why we all play on one world. And we don't play on separate servers, and we don't have the issue of like, well, I play on Atlantic and I play on Pacific, and I can't ever be, yeah, we're shardless. So that's another advantage of having secrets. So again, we launched. Congratulations to everyone. So just general status and highlights, you know, 58 monthly updates in a row, and all of them on time, except a couple that were like a couple of minutes late on one version, like a Mac version that was late due to a compile error. But 58 monthly updates. By the way, nobody does this. No other game does monthly updates on time, all the time. So again, big thanks to you guys for helping us do that. What we've been focusing on lately is tons and tons of bug fixing and polish. So you'll see that in the release notes, there's been a big shift. If you look at, thank you to all of you who actually read those giant tomes. That, you know,
Who actually reads them?
All right, okay. I'm going to talk about a shift on how we present those in a second, and then I'm going to get a temperature on and read on that. You'll see that probably noticed that a big bulk of those now recently has been tons and tons of bug fixes, like literally over 100 fixes a release over the last few releases, and literally a big chunk of that is just trying to improve general quality of life by fixing errors and improving the gameplay experience.
In fact, if I can just throw in here too before I see the next thing down on the list too, which is, you think about 58, you know, on-time, functional releases. You know, to me that is just really staggering to have pulled off, and that's a great testimony to Starr, to drive it, to his kind of management style that's going to pick that up, and it's a testimony to Chris and the rest of the development team that actually managed to pull that off. One little comment I meant to say, even just about the fact that it is now shipped, is you know, we have commonly described ourselves as the second largest crowdfunded game in history, with, you know, a very distant second behind Star Citizen. But we're now actually the largest shipped crowdfunded game, and so that you know, again, I think it's just a testimony to the development process that the team has really took on, and I think executed admirably.
Yeah, and some of the highlights of big recent features is, you know, we got heraldry in, which I know a ton of you in here are taking advantage of, and if you haven't taken advantage, it's an amazing system, and especially if you just go through the direct image submission process.
Which, of course, at our end is really funny. We have a channel where anything that is submitted pops up, so we all get to see the stream of submissions. You know, and the vast majority of submissions are easily passed, but there are some that are very obviously not going to get passed. Someday it might be fun to put a blooper reel together. Here's all the heraldry that you couldn't be passed, and you might want to not have your kids watching while you observe.
And Maxine might want to close her ears with this part. But what we were surprised to find out was, so basically the way heraldry works is, there's a blazon builder which the community built and then we adopted. But then there's a part where you can just directly submit images, and we were really scared about that part. We're like really frightened because user-generated content, UGC for short in the industry, and the game industry loves acronyms, by the way. Like acronyms are, if we can make an acronym about something, we will make it. And so there's another acronym associated with user-generated content, UGC. It's TTP.
TTP.
Which is time to penis. And it's always associated with user-generated content because anytime you allow people to make content, they will draw a penis. That's even if you let them put things on the ground, they will draw a penis with the things on the ground. Or if you let them submit pictures, they will immediately submit pornography. But interestingly enough, you guys are a very well-behaved group. It is amazing. No one really has submitted any pornography with the heraldry, which of course now all of you are going to take this as a challenge. Please don't do that.
Unlike UO though, by the way. Remember in UO
Pornography. We can find it in period too.
But so everyone's been very well behaved, and so there haven't been any really salacious things submitted. But it's amazing. There's been some very hand-drawn things that really haven't been questions. They've just been really ugly. Our favorite was what we affectionately called Fort Kickass, which was someone hand drew, it was obviously they went into a paint program and they just hand drew a castle. And it looks like, what your second grader would show you Daddy, look, I drew a castle. And so we printed that out and we had it up on our wall for a little bit and we called it Fort Kickass. And we really kind of wanted to approve it. We're like, no, we can't. But anyway, heraldry, we were really happy with how heraldry turned out. Brewing was another big feature that we did recently. Player-made dungeons, which is just now going live. The builder version of what's we affectionately call it 0.5 of the builder because it's just a very rudimentary version. Tazar, congratulations for having 1,000-point dungeon already. It's insanely large. We didn't think that anybody was going to have something that's ridiculously big. That's amazing. The people playing with that dungeon builder already, even though you can't really have encounters or decorate it, that just shows the potential of what that system is going to allow people to do. The Obsidian Trials, and by the way, if you haven't wanted to participate in player versus player in the game because you're worried about things like ransom and stuff like that, the Obsidian Trials is a great way to do PvP in our game with zero risk. So if you haven't tried the Obsidian Trials, you should check it out. It's a great zero risk way to do PvP in our game. Then of course the Wyverns, finally we got those in the game so you can have a tameable dragon. Those are going to get a buff next release because I know Chris is going to work on that. Then of course one of my recent favorites, the Cowbell, which is our annual tradition of an April Fool's that's real. Those of you who've been around know that we often do a April Fool's that sometimes is real and sometimes is not. You can never tell. So congratulations. This one was real. Maybe next year, whatever we do won't be.
Cannibalism.
We have our rewards program now. You're able to participate monthly, get a great exchange rate on crowns, automatic participation in the stretch goals. And then we've been making a bunch of quality of life improvements just to improve, basically decrease friction of gameplay. And I know this has been this one was one where we literally just looked at the data. This wasn't a subjective decision on our part of like, well, we think we should do this. We just looked at where people were stopping playing, and one of the big places were when people would encounter sieges or when people would hit control points, and people would literally just log off. And that was just a data point, and people would hit those points in their gameplay experience and just stop playing in their game session. That happened at an often enough point from our data collection that we just decided, while we liked the concepts of those ideas, and we wished that we could have preserved those things and kept the issue was too many people were ending their gameplay sessions because of those issues, and so we just wanted to reduce friction and keep people in the game, because if we don't keep people in the game, then population isn't big enough to have what we call collisions. So you won't encounter people while you're playing, and in a game that relies on people being together and having social experiences, that's a death knell. And so we have to do things, make changes like this to make the game successful. So I know that some people, were going, oh my God, you're trammelizing the game, you're making the game softer and things like that. Well, okay, but the data doesn't lie, right? And so, and if we all want this game to live, as long as UO and live forever, and we all want to be here forever, these are the kinds of things that need to happen, and it makes the game better. And that's objective, not a subjective thing. Yes.
Yeah, but Starr, were they logging out just so that they could go into the overworld map so they could log
No, they were not logging back out. I mean, some people were doing that, but they were a very, very tiny percentage. Like 90% of the people that were logging out were just logging out and not logging back in until later. Or a lot of people were logging out and then not even coming back. There were enough drop-offs that was like the end of their gameplay, and then they weren't coming back. Period. So that.
They wouldn't come back, period.
Yeah. They were just gone. Yeah.
Rage quit.
Right.
Created seeds of discouragement.
Has the skipping statistics shown that's effective now for
Oh,
people
yeah.
to continue play?
Oh yeah, people don't people don't log off now. Like, so they gameplay sessions are longer. People aren't. I mean, it is definitely working.
And by the way, that doesn't mean we like the fictional aspect of it. It doesn't mean we won't continue to explore things like that. Where we'll try to figure out things that we can put up that are high enough entertainment value barriers that you think of it instead of as pain, as hey, something new and fun is happening. It's just that particular execution wasn't working, so we versus fight that versus ignore it or pretend it wasn't the case, we decided to just let people skip it. Yeah.
Maybe if you put more nodes inside the sieges and inside the encounters, that would.
Yeah, we've actually talked about that too.
But at the end of the day, the biggest issue is you're removing choice, and so it doesn't matter how much you increase the reward if you're removing choice, if you're forcing the player to do something. I mean,
I'm not saying. I'm saying continue the skip, but for those of us who are looking for more stuff to gather.
Yeah, we actually have, I think maybe even one of the future talks.
So we're going to talk about that more in crafting and economy.
Okay.
Yeah. So risk versus reward and a whole bunch of balance economy stuff in the crafting deep dive, for sure. Yeah. All right, we keep going. So a big thing we did over the last 6 months is a bunch of visual polish, increasing the visual fidelity of the game. A big change to the lighting and fog settings, and if you haven't played the game in a while since we made those changes, it looks way better than it did before. We're still doing some tweaks along those lines. One of the changes that's going live in 59 is we are increasing the radius for torches and the light spell, so they reach farther. They won't be brighter because making them brighter blows out the visuals, but we are increasing the radius so they reach farther, so you can see farther. And that's also a quality of life improvement as well. Is that while it is again a fun design concept that night is dark and dungeons are dark, the quality of life of like, well, I can't fucking see. That's just not good. Yeah, so we're increasing the radius of those. So some highlights of Q4. So probably the biggest one, and this one's going live in 59. In fact, Chris made this change literally yesterday, which is there will be no more decay. So you do not. You will not be losing your hard-earned skills when you die. So you can thank Chris. Everybody thank Chris.
Thank
I won't murder you now.
Yeah. So
it's still murder him. That's all right.
About 5 seconds for something else for you.
Yeah. So and we're going to talk more about that in the combat deep dive and how that's going to affect skills and long term and things like that. But it was a long time coming, and there were a bunch of things we considered of like, well, do we need to put an alternate in place? And at the end of the day, it was again a quality of life thing of like, we're just gonna yank it out. And not the issue we were concerned about affected such a small percentage of the player base of the maxed out everything that it's just not worth leaving it in. That the average player who it was affecting and disincentivizing them from play, it was not worth keeping. So
about what will replace it in the combat session.
Yeah. Other fun Q4 things is we're going to have some more seasonal content. So those of you who are familiar with some of our previous seasonal content, like the Arch Lapin, the Death Bunny. So we're going to have some more seasonal content. So Pumpkinhead and Krampus. Krampus is one of my favorites. He's going to have like a little army of zombie children. So
give you a good opportunity to kill some children. You know how much that makes me happy.
And Chris just built a cool new boss behavior that we're going to try out with these two, where nearby objects and or other NPCs give the boss power, and or health and so what that means is you have to employ a different strategy for these guys. So you have to take like with pumpkins that we're gonna try with like the Pumpkinhead guy, like he'll be literally in a pumpkin patch, and the number of pumpkins in the pumpkin patch determine his strength. And so you have to take out the pumpkins before you can take him out. And then smashing pumpkins. And then Krampus, you have to take out the zombie children before you can take out the Krampus. So, and the reason, and you want to tell about Krampus?
Yeah. So I think most of you are probably familiar with the classical interpretation of a Krampus, right? That he's running around stealing everybody's bad kids, and to make sure you have parents have a good way to scare their children into behaving well by giving them real nightmares. But of course, that wouldn't have any effect to you as players. And so we thought, we still wanted to use the children metaphor somehow in there, and so we thought about reversing it, which is once he's stolen all those children, what does he do with them? And presumably he tortures them horribly and kills them and does other kind of foul things with them, but basically he's going to turn them all into his zombie minions, and the more of them he has, the more powerful he is. So basically his recovery rate will be make him insurmountable. Based upon how many children have come along with him and how that hassle grows. And so, fighting him head on will actually be useless. You'll actually have to go slaughter all those formerly innocent children. They were bad kids anyway. They kind of probably deserved it.
They're the bad
So Yeah, it's so surprising that Lord British wants you to kill children. All right, some more Q4 highlight. It's we'll keep iterating on the player-made dungeons. So the next thing coming online, and again, we're going to go into more of this in the crafting, actually, and in the combat because they're both. It's all intertwined. But deco, you're going to be able to start decorating your dungeons. I think 59, maybe.
I haven't tested it, but the work has been done for it. I got to go through and make sure. That's a big thing. We don't want to release it early and then people start losing items floating in space and it becomes a huge CS nightmare.
Right.
So try to make sure it's right.
So if not 59, definitely 60, you'll be able to start decoing your dungeons. New website, that actually went live this morning, if you haven't seen it. It's Tassilo and Damon did an amazing job. It looks way better. Of course, more bug fixes, more performance, more polish. Justin, one and only, has been doing nothing but performance for the last month, and so we're thinking that there's going to be some significant gains there. A completely rebuilt new user experience. We're going to talk about that both in the world session this afternoon and also in the story session. But it's a much better new user experience. Two big things that we're doing there is we pulled out all the tutorial elements out of the starting scene and built just a tutorial level basically in the Isle of Storms that literally just, here's how you play the game, and it doesn't try to tell the story, it just is, here's how you do combat, here's how you pick up a sword. We also, and so then the starting scenes are just story and they're not tutorial, and we don't try to do the story and the tutorial at the same time. And then another big change we've made is that we've separated what build you start with from what path you start in. Those are now two independent choices you make because the feedback we've gotten over and over is players don't necessarily want those two things to be tied together. Like, if I want to start on the truth path of the story, that doesn't necessarily mean I want to be a mage. I would I want to, and so what we're actually going to do is we're going to start everybody with, and the other thing is, one of the things we realized is we have this amazing classless system, but then we start you with a single build, and that also doesn't teach you the fact that we have a game that allows you to have all these multiple decks that you can switch between. So what we're going to do is we're going to start you with all 3 decks and teach you how to switch between the decks in the tutorial. And that way you're going to start with a mage deck, a ranger deck, and a warrior deck, and then we're going to teach, and with all that gear, and then we'll teach you how to switch between them. And then again, the paths are just purely story and not build based. And that's all. And that'll go live in 59, and that tied with the new website and some other changes that I'm going to talk about in a second. We think is going to open up a possibility for us to push the game out to a wider audience than we've been able to before. Of course, and another big thing we've been working on is fishing phase 2. Lots of cool stuff happening with fishing. So multiple water types. Over 35 new fish, including lava fish. Those are the weekly update is probably going out any second now, and there's some amazing pictures in there, which I'll show later.
And I just have to throw in a comment too about the fishing. This guy knows that almost every time we rebalance the schedule, fishing had been pushed. I'm always jumping on it going, oh man, we really got to have fishing. We launched UO. Fishing turned out to be unexpectedly this #1 most used feature from the get-go, and so I've always been pushing it on. He's always been pushing it back. We fight about it with some regularity, and so I was very excited to see it actually finally showing up for real on the schedule. And but I was taken by surprise by how far the team has taken it. I mean, it has gone way more detail all of a sudden than at least I had ever expected with the notes that had been continually pushed on the schedule. But the fact that there's freshwater, saltwater, boggy water, really hot molten water, stacks of different kinds of fish, sizes of trophy, the scaling of sizes of trophy, all this stuff, which just make the ability to do leaderboards and tournaments and all this kind of stuff, and you know, there's special rare things that might come in and out of it. Anyway, it's way beyond what I had expected. So congrats to the team for doing it, and I know all of you fisherman types will enjoy it. I'm gonna enjoy it. It's gonna be fun.
So, and here's just a teaser, and we'll talk about more of this in the crafting panel, but if you like using swords and blades, catching swordfish and making food out of that and eating that food would be very, very important.
Never know what affects.
Yeah. All right. Another big thing happening in Q4 is back items enchanting. So this is to solve the problem of like once everybody gets the shroud, everybody wears the shroud because it's the only thing in the back slot that has any stats associated with it. So we're going to make it so back slot items now will have stats with them. And so there'll be different archetypes that'll have different sort of general items, different stats associated with them. We're gonna talk more about that in the crafting panel. But in general, the idea is things like backpacky type things will be associated with strength and carry capacity. Wing-like items will be like speed and dexterity. Cloak-like items will be like stealth and defense type things. So that's and again, that'll give you a choice of like not just wearing the shroud, and so there'll be a choice of backslide. Yes.
Could cloaks get a like snowfall modifier?
Maybe that's a good idea. Loot also. Also, we're good, and we'll talk more about this in the crafting thing. But more loot increases. We're very carefully and slowly doing more loot additions to the game. We have to be, and we'll explain again more detail in the crafting deep dive. But we're adding more carefully, but we have to balance that against our ever-present exploiters and botters and farmers, and so we ruin it for everybody.
And yeah, but you also just want to make sure that that the inflow and outflow of everything remains balanced, because otherwise everybody ends up with all the same infinite amount of stuff.
Yeah. So that's just Q4. So lots of fun stuff happening in Q4. Very exciting. And so these are the fish that you guys have seen before. Forgive me, I didn't have time to get the new pictures that went live in the update. You guys can see those in the update later. But this is just a sample of, so the guys on the left, those are the fetid waterfish, and fetid is swamps and dungeons. So the guy on the bottom there is, he's going to be the skeleton fish, so that's the guy you catch inside the like dungeon water. And then up top, you got all the guys that you catch in like the swamps. And then over on the right are this bunch of the saltwater fish, including that swordfish guy down the bottom that helps with the sword stuff.
And I also didn't even mention that like things like time of day and weather and the nice thing about having all these mechanics now working is that everything can tie into all mechanics and they can all relate to each other. So fishing is inheriting, because it's being put in post-launch, it's inheriting the ability to connect to every system in the game. In theory, we could make the radio effective fish. We don't. We're not. We could. Right. Yeah, exactly. You're right. Don't turn it up so loud.
Well, couldn't we play some music to attract the fish?
Hey, we could.
Yeah.
When you say dungeon, will you put those in a playable?
Not yet, but maybe eventually.
But it would be actually. I'll bet Chris would endorse, if he's still here, that there'd be most of the encounter space pieces are craftable sections that have the encounter built in, and so I expect that would work, where you could make the bedded swampy pool room that has those in it that you craft.
Yeah.
You wouldn't probably deco it, you craft it.
Yeah. So then here's some freshwater fish. Here's the lava fishing rod. So you have to have a special fishing rod to fish in lava. You have to use gems to fish in lava. That's the lure that you need to catch the lava fish. And you'll see in the update, the weekly update, all the theme of the lava fish is all prehistoric fish. So basically we took a bunch of prehistoric creatures and added all these cool glowing and smoking effects on them. So
And that's what happened to all those dinosaur
Right.
era fish. They
Yeah.
didn't go away. They just, when the meteor hit and everything got hot, they just, evolved.
Yeah. So there's a
Evolved.
yeah,
Very
right,
rapidly.
yeah.
Magically.
So there's a coelacanth and an ammonite and a mesosaur. It's very cool. All right, so then 2019, a bunch of cool stuff coming up. We have combat specializations, so we're going to expand the concept of specializations to crafting. So you'll be able to pick a specialization for crafting. So you'll be able to pick one. So you'll be able to pick like alchemy or smithing or tailoring. And then once you pick that specialization, you'll be able to start choosing your effect. So it won't be a random roll anymore. You'll be able to pick which effect that you're applied when you do masterworking or enchanting. And then also we'll be introducing effects that you'll only have available to you when you hit Grandmaster. So there'll be a set of effects that are only available at that level. Yes?
Will that be for the grand mastery of like, say, the tailoring tree, or will it be grand mastery of like the masterwork aspect of it?
It's going to be both. There's going to be effects for both of those things.
Okay.
Yeah. More loot. Again, the careful, slow, considered, but again, our plan is to slowly increase the level of loot available. Better boss fights. So like that behavior that Chris just is working on right now, the nearby power behavior. So we want to just keep adding more behaviors like that to get better boss fights. So it's not just a straight up DPS war like they are now. Just give them more strategy. Along with that, we want to add the sort of the ability to have groups of groups for raids. So right now, groups have a certain size limit. So we want to allow groups to connect to each other, so you can have a larger groups of groups go together to fight bosses. So that's something we want to work on in 2019. More quality of life improvements, including the ability to bind quote everywhere. And so what that's going to mean is right now where everyone uses basically their friends list as a teleport. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it so you can start binding to any town crier and any tier marker in an adventure scene. It's still going to use a teleport scroll, so it's still going to have a consumable tied to it. And then there's going to be a cost associated with it. So you'll pay to add it to your list of bind points, and that cost will probably have some sort of scaling cost associated with it as well. So you'll get a certain number. They'll probably have, you'll get 10 for X cost, and then the next 10 will be another cost, and the next 10 will be another cost. So there'll be a gold sink, so it'll be part of the economy. But that's the idea. So we'll allow people to bind to more places. So like if you have a favorite hunting spot, that'll now be in your bind list. So and again, that's to make it, because one of the things we're observing is that people want to have the ability to log in, get to the place as a group that they want to adventure in, and then get back to their place that they live. But right now, that takes quite a bit of time in our game, and so we want to facilitate that for people in an easier way than it currently is. More weapons. Last release we added 9 new weapons. We want to continue to add more weapons to the game so people have more visual variety. One of the things we're working on right now is a new pole arm type, so forks. So that includes things like tridents. If you've seen the trident that the daemon wields, we want to make that a wieldable weapon for players and a bunch of variety of those as well. And we're even talking about making it have a different, not just a visual skin, but being a different archetype for pole arms. So right now there's just spears and pole arms, but we want to actually make it have a slightly different gameplay effect for pole arms. We're still working on it. We're going to talk about that in the combat deep dive of things we're thinking. We're actually going to do a sort of real-time brainstorming on that one. And then, of course, episode 2. So our goal for 2019 is to have that episode 2 launch by the end of the year. So we're going to start working on the new lands for that at the beginning of the year, and hopefully beginning in the summer, you guys, if you've got early access for episode 2, you'll be able to start seeing some of those new lands in the summer. That's the goal. So, yes.
Yeah, one question. On that, since new lands are going to be in, one thing I loved about you was, the actionable shipping, where you were able to get the ship out, better. So, is that on the board? Or?
We'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. And
we have whole deep dives, story deep dives also cover a lot of episode 2 stuff.
Yeah.
Too.
You made it.
All right. Spoilers. All right. So now, one of the big challenges we're facing right now is that we need more players. So those of you who play the game regularly know that sometimes there's people online and sometimes there's not. And we want we need more people for adventuring. We need more people for our social events. And so we're well aware of that. We know you guys are well aware of that. And so that's one of the reasons we're doing things like making a new website. That's one of the reasons we're doing things like revamping the new user experience because our new user experience was terrible. And so, but we're also doing some other changes that we want to talk to you guys about right now. We're expiring all the bundles. So all the bundles are going away. So Viking, we announced the Viking and Cobalt bundles day before yesterday. Those are going away at the end of November. All the Elven, Shogun, and Obsidian bundles, those are going away in December. And then episode 1, as we're shifting focus to episode 2, episode 1 is going to be free. So episode 2 will still cost money, but episode 1 is going to be free. So our goal for that is to increase the player population. So right now, what we're seeing is the idea of a trial that has limits is limiting our population. So what we are saying is people come in, they try the trial, but they encounter the limitations of not being able to trade with other players, not being able to own property, and that they leave. And so we are going to remove those restrictions. So free players will now be able to trade, they'll now be able to own property. They won't get those initial digital rewards that people were getting, so they won't get they won't get a crown, they won't get a potion, they're not going to get a title, they're not going to get some of those initial things that people were getting with the purchase of episode 1, but they're not going to have any of those restrictions, and that coupled with the revamped new user experience, our new website, we're going to start marketing again. We believe will increase our player population, which will make the game work. And we're looking at where our money is coming from right now. The money is all coming from add-on store purchases. So the money is not coming from bundle purchases. The money is not, and crowns. So all the money is being spent on crowns and add-on store purchases. So we're not making money on the bundles. We're not making money from game purchases. So, and if you look at the model of other games as well, that's how the model of most other games are working as well. They're working from bring as many people as you can into the game and then have them buy currency and objects. And so that's the model we're going to move towards as well. And I know that this is going to be highly controversial to some people, but at the end of the day, we believe very strongly, and the data backs it up, because we're looking at where people are coming in, where they're dropping off, where they're spending their money, and this looks like the best, this all matches to where their behaviors are currently. So that is what's going to happen, and the timing of this is going to be with release 59. So that's when the new user experience will be going live. That's when we believe the game will be, that's when a bunch of the performance improvements we're about to have go live.
Website's already live.
The new website's ready. That's when the timing of all this will happen.
Will
So-
that be going free to play then, or you're gonna avoid that?
Where you can, the website now actually says play for free versus try for free, but I'm not sure we really need to make any bigger statement. It just is, you know, we might call it that. That's not, at least not the
And how
plan
do you
du jour.
feel we will benefit from a larger population?
Right. Well, that's
Who will
the
help stimulate that?
exactly. The intention is to, with Release 59, be able to welcome in any casual player with a website that is more attractive to bring them in, with a new user experience that's more likely to get them to stay, and with them to be able to participate with all of you in a practical way, meaning they can actually trade goods. They can't, all the things they're given originally would be soul-bound or worthless, so you know, they'll be able to immediately start truly participating, and therefore hopefully decide to buy a house.
Well,
whatever
so
it might be.
yeah, I mean, so one of the biggest issues we have right now with our economy, I mean, we have an extremely stagnant economy. So we have a huge inventory of items in the economy.
Yeah.
Like a huge inventory of items, and no one is purchasing. And that is symptomatic of a modest population of players versus a high inventory of items. And so and the problem with our free trial players is they can't participate in that economy. They can't buy any of the items that the crafting economy is generating. They can't purchase any of the items that you guys have from your purchases, right? So anything that you guys have from the bundles or expired items from your pledges or anything that you want to cycle into the economy, the free trial players can't purchase any of that stuff. And so if we have a large influx of population who can now participate in that economy, then, and again, they can buy it with gold, they can buy it with crowns or whatever, then that's going to be a huge benefit.
Basically, supply and demand will increase the demand.
Right.
We've got oversupply now for that.
A huge oversupply. I mean, our economy is not functioning mainly because of population. So, yeah.
So with the bundles, right, so I know you guys have already broken those out so we can buy stuff and now so from the numbers, is that gonna stay? And
All
then
expired.
also, what about the tax-free deeds for those over the 10%?
Those are undecided, but right now we're not planning on having those for sale.
But the other bundle items will stay in the add-ons.
Those are expiring as well. There's a list in the update of what's expiring.
So from a message perspective, with the free-to-play on episode 1, will it be other incentives that already exist in the game advertised to the player base, such as double XP, the bogey after quest completion, get secure your lock weapon today, those types of things where it incentivizes them to get in now, right? Versus
That kind of, yeah, we will continue to do marketing campaigns of that ilk. But what you'll see is between now and the end of this year, anything that you would have thought of as clearly episode 1 is being concluded. And starting next year, we are all episode 2 all the time. So all of the activities are really focused on, if there's new features, new spaces, new stuff coming online, it's episode 2.
Yeah. Yep.
And episode 1 is free.
Promoting the game, I have a small suggestion because all of us love to look at games, and all of us gladly put a little bit of legwork into helping spread the word. Can you guys produce a printable flyer that we can spread around game stores, just, in the laundromat, whatever, where it's like a poster and little full tab with the website.
Oh, sure.
That's fun.
That's a great idea.
I'm like,
Yeah.
we can print them, it doesn't have to be your guys' cost.
Right, but make it available so that anybody who wants to can just put it with their local retailer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
That's a great idea. Okay.
So I don't mean for this to be like a deep dive question. It may be something that's answered later. But
Sure.
So as someone that was a long-time Ultima player, beginner Soda player, one thing that I know a lot of people worry about when they're coming into a new game, and I think that this idea is great, but just out of curiosity and being able to answer this question is, So, okay, great. Episode 1 is free. Now that episode 2 is coming out. For those players that are starting in episode 1, taking advantage of the free content, will they be competitive with people that are in episode 2, or will there be there will be questions about limitations?
Yeah, so let me answer this in the following way, which is, even when for those of you in the long term, there's the big debate as to when do you do the final wipe, because that sort of feels like the last chance to be there on day 1 of the start of some aspect of growth and competitiveness. And so we've dealt with that question, long before now. First of all, let me take it from 2 sides. One is the practical side of any game that goes on for years and years and years, which we hope it's already been around for years and hopefully be many more years. We'll always have new players coming in and old players exiting just naturally. If you think about the people playing World of Warcraft today as a case study, odds are probably close to 0 of them were the people playing when the game launched. And so we have to tune a game in such a way that it's not a race to the top. I mean, people who feel like they have to be there on day 1 or they can't play, that either they really better be wrong or we need to make that be wrong, if you know what I mean. So for the health of everything. So we've tried to make a game where time involved, if you look at the power curve of most games, I would actually say that in the case of most all of the others, most all other online MMO-ish games have sort of an exponential growth rate, to where if someone is 10 levels higher than you, they are radically overpowered compared to you. And so not only do you, when you decide to play with a group of friends, you have to be equally manic in your play with your friends or you fall behind. Right. And if you play, 20% less, you quickly won't be able to play with that group of friends anymore. Right. And so we decided that's not what we wanted to create. So we decided not to create this exponential growth rate. We decided to create almost the opposite, rapid at first and kind of planes out and gets flatter over time. And as it flattens out, you get the advantage of diversity. You can build new decks, put more types. If I had spent 1 month building my fighter character, I can spend another month building my mage, build out. And so you gain diversity, not power over your friends. And so that's at least what we're trying to do. I think, whether or not I think we've done it great or not is up to you. But I think, at least in contrast to most other games, I think we've done, the goal is, I think, better, and I think we've done a reasonable job in approaching that goal.
So just before we run out of time, I want to just talk briefly about episode 2. So there'll be new land, new player-owned towns, although we've sold out. Actually, since I wrote this, I forgot that we sold out all the new player-owned towns and the transfers. I think there's a couple of upgrades still left, but most of these have sold out. Complete revamp of the quest and journal and task system, item history and item leveling. So you'll be able to level up your items. So the more skeletons, if you slay 100 skeletons with your sword, it'll get the title of skeleton destroyer, and it'll get a bonus against skeletons. More expansions to the dungeon building system, pet leveling and skills and customization. A big expansion to the taming system, so that, so for instance, if your bear has like a knockback ability, you'll actually get control of that ability and be able to trigger it when you want, versus the bear doing it on its own. Or like if you have a Corpion, and the Corpion has a poison ability, you'll be able to have that access to that skill and be able to trigger it when you want, or even considering giving you an additional hotbar just for your pets. Player chess settings, so expanding the settings for chess, so that you can do things like set take one or put one in, or do things, or set conditions on it. So like you maybe even like you have to put a particular unique item, or like you have to put a piece of paper in it or something like that, so you can build quests with it.
Yeah, and imagine this is it turns out to be, I think this unlocks a huge potential in all of your dungeon building. Because in addition to, you can imagine, and maybe some of you have already done this, you could put up a reseller that might, you know, take some gold and give you a golden ticket or a key or something, or a book that you've crafted and put in their inventory. But imagine now a chest. You can have at the beginning, middle, or anywhere along in the adventures you want to build, you can put something in there that says, you know, you have to take this golden ticket or crown or whatever it is you want to ask of people for coming through. You have to put one of those things in before it pops out one key. And that one key is used to open that one door. And so now you basically charge for entrance to anything you guys want to do. And make money out of if you make something that's fun enough on the other side of the door, you can, you know, basically ensure that people have paid you to be a part of that experience. You can recycle that currency back into treasure that you eventually, you know, put back in the bank. And so, and you do that with any kind of other conditioner. You know, there were some quests like early on, maybe they're still in there, like the blue torch, you know, fragment quests that were sort of a manual way that some people put that together to make these intermediate stop line quests. So I think this will really open up the ability, this quote simple concept, I think will be able to be used in a wide variety of ways to make interesting adventures.
Can we trap the chest?
Only with bits. Only with bits.
Not currently, but long term possibly. Another right now the only achievement system we have is tied to Steam, but we're going to pull that into the game, so there'll be an in-game achievement system with in-game titles associated with them. So much like the item history and item leveling and item titles will be the same kind of idea. So like you slay 100 skeletons, you'll get a title associated with it, an achievement. And then stretch goals. We've got one currently, which is related to mounts and possibly mounted combat. But then other ones we'll consider after that are things like pack animals, flexible lot placement. This would be the ability to have your house not just be on a fixed location, but anywhere on the lot. Half elven playable race, and ships.
Yes.
And so, different than how we did the stretch goals before. Right now we're just planning on having one stretch goal at a time, and then once that's achieved, then we'll go to another. Because ships is pretty common. You know, there's a lot of issues associated with that.
Answer is yes.
That's a hard one. Yeah. You guys know this. You know, this is a deck more for general conventions, but we have a super active community. You guys are a big part of that. If you don't know it, we have a super active community. You know, there's literally almost daily there's some sort of event going on. We do weekly live streams. Watch our live streams. We give out prizes, and we do our newsletter every week. We do our monthly postmortems, where we also give out prizes.
Prize.
We give out prizes.
You get a prize.
Live it up.
We have constant feedback loops, so please give us feedback. We're very committed to giving you guys tools to do your community stuff. We have the class gauntlets cloak, so if you have a real life community event, please let us know. Please contact me or Serafina, and we'll make sure that you guys get a cloak. So if you're not familiar with how this program works, if you have a real life event like this one, just submit a request to us. You'll get a cloak in the game, and you can, and it'll have a custom name associated with it, and you can request a customized set of colors associated with it as well. And you guys can display that. And then once the ability to have stats associated with this, you can actually wear it, as opposed to just hang it on your wall and wear the shroud instead. And then we're committed to doing make a difference things. So if you're not familiar with that, we have a whole section of our store for Make a Difference, where we contribute up to 50% of proceeds to various charities. By the way, in reference, most companies that do charitable giving give somewhere between 5 and at most 10%. So 50% is a much larger percentage than most. Like for instance, Apple gives about 5 to 10%. big shout out to the Airy Fund who does a ton of work and has raised what, like 200.
We're close to 100.
Yeah, almost $200,000. So amazing work. And then there's dance parties. So every release do dance parties, DJ. So and I learned last night that someone converted to the game because of a dance party. So success. All right. So
is that a question or you're converted?
Make it quick enough so when we're talking.
Yeah.
Let people kind of scoot down in the rows. I'm trying to have everyone fill in seats so they're not sitting in the back here.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So everybody open up some seats on the center aisle.
Appreciate it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. So
Please have a seat.
that's the conclusion of our keynote. But I think we have a few minutes for questions before we do a picture. There's a group picture, I think. All right. So this is our contact info. Like we're giving you our contact info. I don't know if you see this, but that's our contact info.
Small.
So by the way, if you PM me in the forums, I answer those. I literally answer every private conversation.
And I gotta say, he also reads a monumental amount of the posts.
Yeah.
And I will confess, I don't. I'm 100% on Twitter, so if you ever ask me, that's one of the best ways.
I do wade into the wretched hive of scum and villainy that is the forums, and I do read most of it. But if you PM me in the forums, I will answer it. I really will. So do not be shy to contact me, or send me email. I mean, I literally answer everything, and don't be shy. Please feel free to contact me. It's okay. Like it's like.
And let me even talk about that. It's interesting. We both give out our email pretty freely in talks that we give everywhere we go, and you'll actually be very surprised to see how few people ever actually use that. Which is, over time I've become more comfortable giving it out because most people are shy about doing it. So it's actually not become burdensome. But the good part about it is, one of the early lessons of MMOs was how important all the structure is. If you think of, most everybody in the United States can't, call the President of the United States on the phone every day, but there are some people who can, and those people are often related to the senators or mayors or congressmen, and those people are connected to city council, and those people are connected to neighborhood groups or PTAs, and those people are connected to everyone else, in the community. And so everyone only has usually a few steps from being, quote, a citizen within a community, and if they really need to, they can get a message all the way up or down through that political chain. Well, an online community is the same way, right? But the great thing about you all being here is you're one step away. But it's really an important one step away. When you hear about not just an issue you have, if you have a friends or a guild or something else that you're going like, wow, I don't think these guys know this is happening. There's something going wrong in the game that half of you see, half of you don't, but you don't think we see. You can reach us. You're an important part of the communication within it. You're not only the way that everything we're telling you gets disseminated outbound, but the word on the street needs to come up through you. It's required for the health of the community. So that's the power, so to speak, we give you. And I always find it funny when people, claim favoritism or other things. And we're like, no. The contact method's pretty freely available. It's not hard to find. It's just you guys listen, you looked at it, you remembered it, and we choose to communicate. So it's a choice. It's not favoritism. It's just, if you want to do it, be a part of it.
Well, what's your TTP on that one?
So far, none. It's not a challenge, though. It's not a challenge. All right, we have a few minutes for some questions, and then we'll. I think we're doing a photo or something. All right. Yes, sir.
Wouldn't it kind of make sense competitively, like to lower the crowns like once or twice a year to about 30%? Because I think you guys probably see a big influx of crown sales. Like there are probably some people that are on the fence of buying crowns because they're, like $1 per crown, basically. So I mean, if you have the 30%, people would be more apt to buy crown goods when they're on sale those times of year. Because on the secondary market, you can buy them for about 50 cents, 45 cents. But I'd rather support Port Larry and buy them on the secondary.
Well, Yeah, the reason though that they're that cheap is because there was a significant exploit and so that's the reason they're that cheap. So once those crowns that were part of that exploit flush out of the system, the price will normalize back. So
we think if you lower the price, that might just feed that longer. Yeah, maybe we look at that. That's the one that we do data driven, and we'll look at other games too. So
it's pretty rare for premium currency to be discounted. Like that's a pretty non-standard.
I would give him, I'd want $200.
Yeah.
Sell their stuff. So I'm just.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll look at it.
Okay. Yes.
On the, talking about revamping the permission system on the chess.
Yeah.
Is that indicative of a larger revamp or pass through the whole permission system? Because it's really cumbersome in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I mean it'll probably be a complete rework of that user interface for housing and stuff at the same time. Yeah. Yes.
I was just wondering, with the introduction of a new player experience, are the old areas going to go away, or
no? And we'll talk more about this in the world building thing. But quick summary is that none of those scenes are going away. One of them got rebuilt, Soulless Bridge, but the other two just got some polish work on them. But none of those got replaced or went away. They just got.
And all the story parts of them are still there. So there's Save the Young Girl and the burning building, etc. All that sequence remained.
Right.
The part that got changed is the go over there, pick up that sword. The part that was tutorial-like got pulled into separate earlier tutorial space.
Yeah, and that just got basically inserted between Isle of Storms and those starting scenes. So before you go to any of those starting scenes, we put you in another tutorial space. So that's gated. Yes.
Is there any consideration given to NPC towns, either forcing or requesting the option to go into open, so that I'm not, sometimes I'm in there as private or party, I'm like, oh, I've got so much better.
Funny that you say that. Thank you for that softball. And this will be controversial, but we are going to start forcing open multiplayer in towns.
I think it's
and you mean guiding you to open
Yeah. So because again, the number of times that people will go into towns and don't see anyone and think, oh, the game is empty.
And it's really because they accidentally went in with.
Right. Yeah. We already do that for PvP areas, and so there's already a precedent there. And so, and yes, it will be controversial, but it will be better for the
But that means still, if you want to go in an adventure space, a dungeon or whatever else, that you kind of do it with your party or alone.
Yeah. I think it's genius.
Genius, pure genius.
So make sure you spread when the naysayers show up, but make sure you help us fight that battle.
It would be struck
yes,
down.
good knights, good guard.
How are we going to deal with players who get 100 or more in a scene?
Instances.
Yeah, it'll just, it already does instances.
About 100 to 120.
What's
Yeah, when people say, can we make it more than that? We're balancing between two things. You guys also push for increasing limits of decorations, and that goes exactly opposite of increasing number of players. And so you can't have both. They both run up against the limit of the frame rate of the machine, and so then we have to decide which of those we push up. We actually think that other than dance parties are kind of special because we purposely push the limit. That's that we're trying weirdly to bog the game down or see how it handles under those same conditions. But it's actually really rare, other than dance parties, to be pushing that hard. And so we think that limit is about right. I mean, if in some hypothetical futures, if we end up having scenes become overcrowded, then we might decide that that's a bigger one to push next as we get performance improvements, you know, we'll maybe apply that more to number of people in the scene versus increasing the number of decos you guys can have. And so, you know, we'll keep expanding those as machines just get faster over time, and as we build better code. But you know, we'll push one or the other up depending on where the pressure is.
What's the current?
Would it be possible to make that a setting on a pot owner, where they can be like, okay, so I would rather have higher storage capacity, or I would rather have higher density?
You know, hypothetically you could, but at least off the cuff, I don't think I'd recommend it. At least I'll match in on it more. But I think that will, you know, already we have such complex ownership activities already. Like one of the ones that I don't know how to streamline, but I'm constantly thinking about how can you rent rooms more simply, other than the incredible manual work you have to do to build rent spaces within a space. But even occupying towns and permissions is already pretty complex in my mind, and so unless it's pretty compelling, I'm not sure